Imagine you have an idea, like in this position you want to promote this pawn, and your opponent can just stop it. If you play a4, the opponent is gonna play king c7, and the king is capable of stopping the pawn. What do you do in a situation like that? You go and create another problem for your opponent to deal with. In this case, it's h4, and because you have two passed pawns on different sides of the board, your opponent cannot stop both of them at the same time. And this is a simplified way of explaining the idea of the principle of two weaknesses. That's a strategic idea where you create more problems for your opponent. Practically, if your opponent has to deal with a problem, imagine they have to protect their pawn, you go and attack another pawn, which means that your opponent cannot do two things at the same time. Or even if they can defend two things at the same time, it means you can go and create one more weakness. So practically, instead of focusing on one plan that you have, you go and create another plan, creating more problems for your opponent to deal with. And let me explain it by showing some more complicated examples. So let's take a look at this position. What weaknesses can you find for black? And the answer is a bit complicated. First of all, the king is right there in the corner, which means you can try to exploit it and maybe put your queen to f8 and checkmate the king. So that's a problem number one for your opponent to deal with. The second thing is the pawn on e6 and the pawn on c6. Actually, two more things you may be able to exploit. And the third thing you need to keep in mind is that your pawn a3 doesn't have any pawn enemy, which means it can become a passed pawn anytime soon. So by seeing that your opponent has those problems, you may be able to exploit them. For instance, you can start with playing queen to h6, and now it's practically a double attack. You want to play queen f8 checkmate, as well as you want to take the pawn on e6. That means black has to play queen f7, and they defend two things at the same time. And now it's time to go and create one more thing for your opponent to deal with. a4, and now you have a passed pawn, and practically black is in Zugzwang. The black queen cannot do all the things at once, so it has to stay close to not get their king checkmated. Let's say they play queen e8 protecting both things, and again you just push a5, and you still can push a6 even after the queen goes to c8 because they can't take you because of the checkmating idea on f8. They go king g8 to not get checkmated and a7, and as you can see, you already just created a passed pawn, and the easiest thing for you to do in the future is to just get your queen to b8. For instance, they go king h8 because they can't really do much, to be honest, queen f6 and queen e7, and your job is to go queen d6 and queen b8 and just promote your pawn. And that was possible because instead of focusing on one thing after playing queen h6, instead of focusing on checkmating, you exploited all possible problems for your opponent, which included promoting your own pawn. Another example is taken from Alekhine game, or as you all like to call him, Alekhine. So practically in this position, white already has a passed extra pawn b2, which means that's already a problem for your opponent for black to deal with. That's a passed pawn, but because it's just one problem, one weakness for your opponent, they may be able to defend from it. They may be able to block the pawn. So Alekhine comes up with an idea to create another weakness, and he wants to create a pawn weakness on the king side. Let's see what he does. He plays bishop d3 and then g4 and h4 and h5. So he's aiming the pawn on g6, and after the pawn takes, h7 becomes weak. Black is trying to attack the white weakness on f3, but after bishop e4, everything is pretty much protected, and Alekhine doesn't forget to fixate the weakness on h7, which means the pawn can never go to h6. It will always be on a light square for the bishop to attack. And that means the second weakness is already created. So in a couple of moves, Alehin attacks it again with a queen, and he also offers a queen trade. And after that, you can already see that black cannot deal with many things at the same time. That's a pass pawn, and that's a weakness that white is attacking, which means if black decides to protect it, that would be something that the king has to deal with for the entire game. Meanwhile, white could push this pawn, activate their king, and promote, because the king will be stuck defending this weakness. So black decides against it. They decide not to protect the pawn, and white just takes it, and honestly it just simplifies the work for white, because now they definitely have two passed pawns, two problems for black to deal with. And another very famous example is this endgame. The position looks equal because we're equal in material, but in reality, white is already winning. If you're good enough to see strategy and to be patient, because it's gonna take a lot of moves. But trust me, you're gonna love the idea. So practically the white king is more active, and it dreams of getting to b6 to attack the pawn on a6 again, or maybe to d6, but the black king has everything under control. So it's time to make another weakness for black, and let's look at their weak pawns, unprotected pawns. Those are g7 and h7, and it's nice job to go and attack them. So let's see what white does. They go knight d3, they want to go knight h5, so black plays g6, knight h3 because white wants to go to g5, and again attacking the pawn. Going to h5, f6 and g4 to attack the pawn again. And in a couple of moves, black is trying to attack the white pawn, but it doesn't matter. So white just fixates the weakness on h5, making it always stay on the light square, a problem for the black bishop to protect. And after take, you can see that black has so many weaknesses, and it's the bishop's job to defend all those things. So if you can just find a perfect spot for the knight to attack many things at once, maybe you can put the black bishop in zugzwang. So let's see what white does. They remaneuver their knight, attacking the bishop, and first they put it to g4, and then they finally go to e2 and f4, and from this spot the knight is attacking both h5 and e6, and that means the bishop has to stay on g4 to protect both things at the same time. And the final move for white is b4. That means black is finally in zugzwang. The king has to defend those squares, the bishop has to defend those pawns, and they can't make another move without losing anything. So black plays king d7, which lets the white king go to b6 and finally take the pawn on a6, and white is already up a pawn. And the next move for black was king c6, after which white took another pawn, so black resigned. And as you can see, the idea behind this principle of two weaknesses is to create as many problems for your opponent to deal with as possible. Instead of focusing on one idea, as I said before, you want to exploit different problems, attack unprotected pawns, or maybe create weaknesses to attack like Alehin did in his game, or maybe have a pass pawn, so you can distract your opponent by doing something else as well as trying to promote your pawn. Hope that made some sense and you learned one new strategic idea for your chess improvement. If you want to take your chess strategy and middle game understanding to the next level, you're welcome to join my beginner-friendly course from making moves to making plans, available on Chessable with a discount now. I'm gonna attach the link to the course down below in the description, and feel free to ask any questions regarding it in the Chessable forum, as well as you can ask any questions about chess strategy in the comments down below.